Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching Gulf Today on News X World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The UAE has sent its 244th aid convoy into Gaza, with 22 trucks carrying 426 tons of supplies under Operation Chevalier's Night 3. The operation, which has delivered over 100,000 tons of aid to date, aims to support more than 20,000 orphans in Gaza by providing education, healthcare, psychological support, and essential needs. At least 42 Indian Umrah pilgrims, including several from Hyderabad, are feared dead after their bus collided with a diesel tanker near Mufrihad in Saudi Arabia while en route from Mecca to Madinah in Saudi Arabia. Syrian Defense Minister Murhaf Abu Qasr has received a high-level Russian delegation led by Deputy Defense Minister Yunus Bek Yevkurov to strengthen military coordination and deepen strategic ties, while Syrian Agriculture Minister Amjad Badr met with the Syrian-Russian Joint Committee in Damascus to boost agricultural cooperation. UAE leaders, including President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, extended congratulatory messages to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa on Palestine's Independence Day yesterday. This comes as the UN Security Council will hold a crucial vote today on a resolution backing US President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan. Dubai Air Show 2025 starts today until 21st of November at Dubai World Central. It will host over 1,500 exhibitors, 148,000 visitors, and 490 delegations from 115 countries, and the largest ever display of 200-plus aircraft, marking its biggest edition as global leaders shape the next era of aerospace and defense. Turkey has proposed a joint presidency with Australia for COP31 to break a two-year hosting deadlock. However, Australia has now rejected Turkey's proposal, while Turkey insists on flexible formulas, but it says that it is prepared to host COP31 alone if consensus fails among the 28-member bloc. Syria and Belgium held talks in Damascus as Syrian Transport Chief Qutaiba Badawi and Belgian Charge d'Affaires Arnold Pauwels explored expanding cooperation in transport and logistics, emphasizing Syria's goal of becoming a regional logistical hub and Belgium's commitment to supporting border modernization and investment. Syria's Oversight Chief Amir al-Ali has met with Qatari Ambassador Khalifa Abdullah al-Mahmoud in Damascus to strengthen bilateral cooperation in anti-corruption and transparency, praising Qatar's support and experience in modern oversight practices as Qatar reaffirmed its commitment to assisting Syria's recovery and development. Now we start with the latest news. The Indian Minister of External Affairs S. Jaishankar has stated in a post on X that he's deeply shocked by the bus crash in Saudi Arabia that has reportedly killed 42 Indian pilgrims traveling to Madinah. In view of the accident, the ministry has also announced that a 24/7 control room has been set up at the Consulate General of India in Jeddah to assist families of the victims and those seeking information on the crash. This comes as at least 42 Umrah pilgrims from Hyderabad in India are feared dead after a passenger bus traveling from Mecca to Medina collided with a diesel tanker. Reports have said that among the 43 passengers, there were around 20 women and 11 children. Local media has reported 42 fatalities, but officials are still verifying the exact number of casualties and assessing the conditions of the survivors. Emergency teams are currently engaged in recovery operations, and more details are awaited. According to reports, there is no official statement yet on the cause of the crash, but both the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah and the travel agency have confirmed the accident. Now we have a reporter joining us live, Brian Anthony Thomas. He's a correspondent of NewsX. Thank you very much, Brian, for joining us again. What more can you tell us about this unfolding incident?
At least 42 Indian Umrah pilgrims, many of them reportedly from Hyderabad, are feared dead after their bus collided with a diesel tanker near Mufrihat on the Mecca-Madinah highway in Saudi Arabia. Very importantly, the impact triggered a massive fire, leaving several passengers burnt and others critically injured, according to what we are getting to know from our inputs itself from the local authorities. Clearly, emergency and civil defense teams rushed to the crash site, launching rescue, fire control, and medical evacuation operations, and officials are also verifying the final casualty count and working to identify the victims. Clearly, the Telangana government has also reached out to the Ministry of External Affairs. S. Jaishankar has also spoken about this tragic incident happened. Chief Minister also expressed, A. Revant Reddy expressed shock over the tragedy and directed the Chief Secretary and DGP to immediately gather complete details. Now, the CM also instructed authorities to stay in constant touch with the Indian Embassy in Riyadh and the Saudi administration for swift assistance. Not only that, a control room has been set up at the Telangana Secretariat to coordinate information for families. The state CMO also posted helpline numbers on X, and even the Consulate General of India in Jeddah has also established a 24/7 emergency helpline. Clearly, even there have been many leaders who are speaking about this incident that has happened. Not only that, a control room has been established at Telangana Bhavan in New Delhi also in response to the tragic bus accident that happened. Not only that, at present, authorities are working to verify the full details of the accident, including the number of pilgrims from Telangana who maybe have been affected. Updates are also being shared with families. Now, there have been many such contact numbers given at the Telangana Bhavan, New Delhi. One would be Vandhana, that is the PS to Resident Commissioner and Liaison Head. That is 9871999044. Then there is C.H. Chakraborty, who is the Public Relations Officer. The number is 99583 22143. Another being Rakshit Naik, who is the Mission Officer, and the number goes 9643723157. Yes.
Right. Thank you very much for sharing all that insight and staying with us. Now we move on to our next news. Now we move on to Middle East. According to reports, Hamas has begun stockpiling advanced weapons outside Gaza with plans to smuggle them into the enclave in the future. The group is allegedly storing weapons in several African states, Yemen, and other locations, aiming to move them to strategic sites, including Gaza. The report comes amid growing discussion that the Trump administration may advance its Gaza reconstruction plan even without immediate Hamas disarmament, as efforts to secure international partners for a demilitarization force stall. Israel insists no progress can be made until Hamas is fully disarmed. Defense Minister Israel Katz said the IDF is advancing tunnel demolition operations along the Gaza side yellow line, while IDF Chief of Staff LT Lieutenant General Eyar Zamil has said forces must be ready to seize more territory if needed. On the sidelines, other reports have suggested the IDF has uncovered a Hamas commander diary in Beit Hanun detailing the group's embedding of operations in schools, hospitals, and UN facilities. Evidence, Israel says, supporting long-standing claims about Hamas's use of civilian infrastructure. Now for this discussion, we welcome Peter Baum. He's a foreign editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us again. Do you think that U.S. moving forward, even though demilitarization of Hamas has not happened yet, what do you think are the problems or objectives lying between these Hamas demilitarization, and what do you think Israel will do to push and make sure that demilitarization happens before anything else?
Okay. It was obvious to any analyst, any political researcher, any commentator looking at the Trump peace plan that one of the most difficult issues would be the disarming of Hamas, and therefore leading on from that, the demilitarization of Gaza. Now, Hamas is trying its very best to retain some kind of influence, major influence, in the lives of the Gazans going forward. Politically, her former master, Iran, is totally isolated, and Israel has tried, and the United States have tried to break the funding of Hamas, whether that's through Iran, which they've done reasonably successfully, or through the United Nations organization's personnel working with Hamas, such as those working in Umrah. Now, financially, if that business model is broken, then Hamas are going to find it increasingly difficult to procure the necessary armaments that it needs to carry out its objective militarily. Politically, Hamas still has some credibility with the likes of Qatar and Turkey, but less so. Now, in order for full demilitarization to take place, Hamas are naturally going to have to give up all their arms, which they are not prepared to do. And this major issue is going to be one of the reasons why the Trump peace plan will have difficulty in terms of the time frame to achieve its second objective, let's say phase 2 of the plan. As far as we all know, at the moment, Hamas is still reasonably well equipped, but nothing like it was during the October the 7th conflict. So piece by piece, the Trump administration and Israel are dismantling the Hamas military infrastructure. And only then, when those two actors believe that Hamas are completely ill-equipped, let's say, will phase 2 of the total demilitarization of Gaza be able to proceed.
Right. And how should international community balance humanitarian reconstruction efforts in Gaza with the political and security imperative of ensuring Hamas disarmament, if possible?
Yeah, this again is a key issue. No organization or nation will want to commit their people to Gaza in the knowledge that the two sides could soon come into conflict with each other. So as I said before, it will only be when the good faith actors feel comfortable enough that Hamas as a military force is ill-equipped to achieve its terrorist ambitions, should those good faith actors go into Gaza and start help with the reconstruction process. And really the ball is in Hamas's court and those with whom are currently able to influence Hamas, who are, let's face it, Turkey and Qatar. They are the only two, and obviously through them the Trump administration, but Turkey and Qatar should step off the fence and, let's say, stop their duplicitous role of wanting to impose the Trump administration whilst at the same time giving some kind of comfort factor to Hamas.
And what do you think of the alleged stockpiling of weapons in multiple countries? How do you think this is complicating more regional diplomacy and efforts to curb transnational arms smuggling to Hamas?
Well, I think we will never, as a united democracy globally, stop arms smuggling. So it's highly possible that that Hamas is equipping itself or getting funding through arms through other countries. The Israeli and American intelligence is sufficiently in tune to understand if that is happening, which countries are providing such equipment. So I think as long as Hamas have funding in place, they will be able to procure weapons. As long as those weapons are outside of the conflict zone, then I think there's still a possibility that enough political pressure can be brought on those countries seeking to help Hamas to actually tone down the equipment that is in place. And what equipment can it be? It must be small arms fire. It can't be anything like tanks or anything like that. So
Yes.
if Hamas are to rearm itself, I'm afraid it's only the people of Gaza that are going to suffer again, and we may yet see another conflict. But let's think positive about this. Let's say that the funding is in place for Hamas to procure small arms fire, and that the intelligence is sufficiently robust that those arms will never get into the Gaza area. They can only get through either the Egyptian Rafah crossing, and I think that there may be elements on the Egyptian side that are corrupt enough to allow this to happen. Certainly by sea, Israel will not allow it, nor by air. So a window of opportunity for Hamas, but I don't see this as being a major issue going forward.
Right. Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Hamas and other Palestinian factions in Gaza have issued a statement overnight rejecting the US-backed resolution set to be voted on at the UN Security Council later today, calling it dangerous and an attempt to place the Gaza Strip under international authority. The factions have said that they reject any clause requiring the disarmament of Gaza or limiting what they describe as the Palestinian right to resistance. They have also opposed the deployment of any foreign military presence inside of Gaza, saying it would violate Palestinian sovereignty. The statement added that any international force must operate directly under the UN and coordinate only with official Palestinian institutions without involvement from Israel. The Security Council vote concerns President Donald Trump's comprehensive Gaza ceasefire plan, which envisions the territory being handed over to an international stabilization force and an apolitical Palestinian administration which will be overseen by Trump-chaired Board of Peace. The plan calls for Gaza's demilitarization and reconstruction, though Hamas has so far refused to accept demilitarization terms. Now we welcome back Peter Baum. He's a foreign editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Peter, for staying with us. Peter, looking at this, what are we to make of the Hamas's warning? As you also mentioned in our earlier discussion, that Hamas does not, even though Hamas is not a legitimate authority or governing body, Hamas does hold some say in Gaza, regardless of what international community or international players in this might want.
Yes, now this is going to be very interesting and very much is connected to the previous question that we were going through, and why.
Yes.
If in this resolution that we're going to witness today, there are any people voting no or indeed abstentions, that will give the green light that Hamas is not as politically isolated as good faith actors hope she will be. If it's a unanimous vote for the resolution, that will further indicate to the world at large that Hamas is now totally politically isolated, and by clinging on to the hope that somehow she will be able to be a force militarily within Gaza would give her zero credibility. So the vote today is going to be very important on many accounts, most importantly to see how isolated Hamas is from those who are currently able to communicate with the leaders of Hamas. If the likes of Turkey and Qatar, for example, or any other Arab nation for that matter, either abstains or indeed votes against the resolution, then that will be a clear indication that Hamas is not as isolated as the anti-Hamas factions hopes it will be.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Peter for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in the region. Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is set to visit the White House on Tuesday for talks with President Donald Trump aimed at deepening decades of cooperation on oil, security, and a broadening commercial partnership. It marks MBS's first trip to the United States since the 2018 killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, an incident that drew global outrage after U.S. intelligence concluded the Crown Prince approved the operation, a claim he denies, though he acknowledges responsibility as the kingdom's leader. 7 years on, both governments appear focused on moving forward. Trump is eyeing a massive $600 billion Saudi investment pledge made during his visit to Riyadh in May, while MBS arrives seeking stronger U.S. security guarantees amid rising regional instability. He's also pushing for access to advanced artificial intelligence technologies and progress towards a civilian nuclear energy agreement. Human rights concerns are not expected to feature prominently on these discussions. Now we go back to Peter Baum. He's a foreign editor at Weekly Blitz. Thank you, Peter, for staying with us. Now, looking at this again, as last time you mentioned, Abraham Accords and everything in the table could come to agreement. To what extent could this focus on commercial and security cooperation signals a shift in U.S. foreign policy priorities under current administration, and particularly regarding accountability for fast actions like the Khashoggi killing?
Yeah, now the visit by MBS to the Trump house could end up being very disappointing for many parties. It's clear that from a commercial perspective, the Trump administration wants to do as much business with Saudi in order to help the US economy. Make no doubt about that. This is going to be the driving factor behind the visit, and undoubtedly Trump will be able to come out of the visit at its end, giving a press conference stating just how many billions of dollars this visit has concluded for the US economy. But what Trump also wants, in the wider perspective, is to bring Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords. And looking at this from an analytical point of view, it would be incredible if Saudi, after the meeting, joined up to the Abraham Accords, having stated previously that it won't until full recognition of a Palestinian state is made by the US administration. Well, that's not going to happen. So I think that there will be some very positive elements coming out of the trip, but also some disappointing ones as well. Naturally, I should be personally delighted if Saudi joins the Accords. Now, in terms of the AI and military deals that will be going on, this will be further done to ensure Saudi's strengthening position against her arch enemy, which is Iran, which currently finds itself very severely isolated on the global stage for a whole number of reasons that we've spoken about before. So this will indeed further pressure Iran and the government of Iran, and this is all designed to achieve that objective. But on a greater, wider political scale, it would be a major achievement if Trump could bring Saudi into the Abraham Accords, and what a message that would send to the world globally. So it's going to be a very interesting meeting. I don't think that the Abraham Accord signing up to will be achieved. I hope it is. Be very surprised if it is, but from a commercial factor, it will certainly assist the Trump administration, and from a defensive factor, it will certainly embolden and enhance the Saudi position against Iran.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Peter Baum for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news on Gulf. Now we move on to our next news. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says Australia will not co-host the COP31 climate summit with Turkey, rejecting the idea on the grounds that joint hosting is not allowed under UN climate rules. His comments come as Ankara continues to push for a shared role despite a 2-year stalemate in which both countries have refused to withdraw their competing bids. Turkey and Australia each applied in 2022 to host next year's UN climate conference, and the impasse has now become a key issue at COP30, currently underway in Belém, Brazil. Securing the host role is critical because it shapes the agenda and sets the diplomatic tone for global climate negotiations. Australia maintains strong regional backing from the Pacific Islands Forum, a bloc of 18 nations, many of which are on the front lines of rising sea levels, further bolstering its bid. But unless one side steps back, the hosting deadlock will continue. Let's listen into what the Australian Prime Minister has shared.
No, we won't be co-hosting because co-hosting isn't provided for under the rules of the UNFCCC. So that's not an option, and people are aware that that's not an option, which is why it's been ruled out.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Doctor, now looking at this, how could this deadlock between Australia and Turkey over hosting influence broader effectiveness, and what do you think will be happening, as it's very soon, it's next year, the UN climate COP31?
Yes, in this case, indeed, Australia, the Turkey, the Brazil, this country, Brazil is currently, but Australia and Turkey both raising hand to hold the COP31. But at the same time, indeed, their policy towards the climate change is different. So to win the bid, the Turkey asked Australia to be the co-host and join this together. So in this case, they can win to hold COP13, and long time the Turkey wished to do, and Australia raised a hand to be represented with South Pacific. That is also they want to. But the problem is the interest of the Turkey and the interest of the Australia is different. And in case of Australia, Australia want to the representative of the interest of the South Pacific, but the attitude of South Pacific and Australia, they are a little bit different. In case of the South Pacific, of course, the climate change is and the rising sea level is very important. And for Australia, this is important, but at the same time, Australia want to continue to export coal. So that's why the two interests are different. So that's why even if Australia and the South Pacific Island nations, there is a complication between two. And if the Turkey join, it will be complicated more. So can they do that? Can they do the co-host to hold the COP31? Maybe it will be very complicated if they raise hand jointly. So that's why the view from this situation more simple is better, and in this case, a co-host is very difficult to Australia thing. That is the reason that they express this, I believe.
Right, and lastly, to what extent does these regional alliances, as you mentioned, Australia has a support from South Pacific Islands Forum, and how do you think this is shaping the political dynamics and power struggles within global climate governance, especially when it comes to hosting such summits?
Yeah, global climate governance is indeed they share the interest, because rising the sea level means that there is a possibility some of the island cannot be the area that people can live because they're under the sea. So that could happen. So in this case, these people, where will they go? Of course, there's a high possibility that they will go to Australia or other big nations who still have the land. So that's why in case of this rising the sea level, they share the interest. It is true. But at the same time, Australia is the main exporter of the fossil energy like coal or others. So that's why, view from the South Pacific, the complicated feelings they have towards Australia. So that's why even if Australia try to be the representative of South Pacific, this is a problem. And recently, China is expanding the influence in the South Pacific, and they try to take the influence of the Australia to their so in the Pacific, the China want to become the most influential country instead of Australia. And this is a problem. So view from Australia, Australia has the will to stop the China's move, and in this case, they care about South Pacific island nations' interest. That's true. But at the same time, of course, I have already mentioned the energy export from Australia is a very important interest for Australia too. So that's why the complicated situation is existing in this place.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru for sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move back to Middle East. Lebanese presidency has stated that Lebanon will file a complaint with the UN Security Council accusing Israel of constructing a concrete border wall that extends beyond the UN mapped blue line. Recent footage showed the wall running along the southern border with sections still unfinished. The blue line marks the boundary between Lebanon and Israel and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, established after Israel's withdrawal from South Lebanon in 2000. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric has stated that the wall has rendered more than 4,000 square meters of Lebanese territory inaccessible to residents of Lebanon. Lebanon has echoed this assessment, calling the construction a violation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701 and an infringement on Lebanese sovereignty. The Israeli military has denied the accusation, saying the structure does not cross the blue line and is part of a broader IDF plan that began in 2022. And that's a wrap on Gulf Today. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.